You know, the Joy News channel has been very heavily pushing a campaign to disband party militias now. In furtherance of that goal, we are very honored to have our guest today, who was, while the NDC was in power, the national organizer of the party. Mr. Kofi Adams is our guest on AM Talk today. Mr. Adams, how nice to see you. It has been quite a while, hasn't it?
Very true.
Indeed, indeed.
Been off air for some time.
You have, yes. Deliberate hibernation or?
Possibly other assignments,
Okay.
and also to allow colleagues who have just taken over time enough to settle in and to decide on what they think that you can also do to help the system.
Okay. Well, I mean, we are very interested in hearing from you today because of your own position in the party over the years, especially at a time when they were in government. Today we have the NPP in government, and the president is seeking to see a process that leads to the solution that these militia groups are causing us. And well, that process is started with letter writing. The NDC wrote to the president, he wrote back, they wrote again, he wrote back. And now the NPP, finally, weeks after they were asked to do so, have invited the NDC to this dialogue. But in their invitation, they seem quite prepared to hear and consider the suggestions of the NDC. To many of us, we thought, finally, problem solved. We're going to have the dialogue. Let's see what comes out of it. And then another letter. And it's not even a reply to the NPP party. It's another letter to the president. And this time, it looks as if the NDC is shifting the goalpost. Their thinking has evolved, according to this new letter. Now, it shouldn't be just the two parties meeting to decide how broad the consultation should be, but it should simply be a national dialogue. They've even given it a theme. And they're writing to the president again, the man who wanted to step aside from the process of the dialogue and simply observe it. I mean, the letter is here on our screens. Let's see if we can look at some of the key parts of it. We don't need to read the whole thing. But there is that paragraph on engagement with the NPP, where they say, we have indeed received a letter from the General Secretary of the NPP requesting that we meet this week to take this decision forward. We are gratified to note that your party's interest is in the wider participation that we suggested in our correspondence, and presumably in the possibilities of external process facilitation that we also propose. We will happily pursue this with the NPP National Executive and put forward in greater detail the broad ideas set out in our last letter to you. Now, here's the bit I'm talking about. We, however, request that as president, you remain supportive of, if not engaged with, the process. Our thinking has evolved and clarified considerably in the last month. We now define the process we have suggested as a national dialogue on constitutionalism and non-violent social engagement. We believe this formulation captures the scope of the threat that our nation faces. Organized violence has become prevalent not only in partisan politics, inter and intra-party, but in land and natural resource disputes, chieftaincy disputes, disputes within academic institutions, and even disputes within religious bodies. We can also not exclude the problem of unjustified violence by state agencies such as the Ghana Police Service. It is this larger and intensifying violent culture that threatens our constitutional republic, and not just partisan political violence. We hope that as the first citizen, you will use your position to support and shape this broad national dialogue. So, Ms. Adams, shifting the goalpost.
Good morning to you once again, and good morning to your viewers. The NDC, as a political party, and its leadership have never shifted the goalposts. We have remained same and focused. We have only sought to explain further if there is any misunderstanding in the mind or head of His Excellency the President. We have sought to explain that to make sure that His Excellency the President is very clear in his mind and understands what it is that we stand for and what it is that we represent, which civil society groups and many other institutions that have been engaged have actually bought into. We did not only write to the president, we also wrote to the MPP, a letter addressed to the General Secretary. So 2 letters were done, one signed by our General Secretary, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, Honorable, and the other one to the president, signed by the National Chairman, Mr. Samuel Ofosu Ampofo. So there were 2 letters.
Right.
We replied to the MPP about their invitation, where we stated clearly and acknowledged their change of position and departing from the proposal from His Excellency the President, who primarily happens to be the leader of the party, that they were willing to allow for other persons broadening of the discussions. And the reason why in a matter such as this it's important to have a mediator right from the word go is to reduce suspicion. Because if just the 2 of us go to meet and there are disagreements and you come out stating a position and I'm also stating another position, who tells the public that is suffering the impact of all these militia or vigilantism, who tells them exactly the truth as to what transpired there? That's why it makes sense in having such a discussion, even in discussing who also will participate. There's a need to have a mediator. A mediator who, when there is a disagreement and maybe the thing gets filtered out to the public, because you, the media, will be interested. Yeah. So you will be following up on what is happening. MPP comes to saying, when we met, we only agreed that 4 parties should take part. It should be parties with these characteristics. NDC may come and say, oh no, that is not the case. Who becomes the barometer to check who is telling the truth? That is why, even in that discussion, the 2 parties cannot just go and sit. And our proposal has always been the best. And anyone who is particularly interested in resolving this problem should not have a challenge accepting our proposal. Because even when you listen to or you read the response from the National Peace Council to the NDC when we engaged them, they actually quoted the law that established them, indicating clearly that this is part of their responsibility and they are ready and willing to avail themselves to perform that role. We thought this assurance from the National Peace Council would have helped His Excellency the President in responding to our letter. But rather, the way he responded to our letter, I'm sure, made it difficult for this institution to even possibly push further to play their role. But thank God that about 12 civil society organizations came together and also, I believe, raised similar concerns that are same with what the NDC was raising earlier. And coupled now with the letter written by the MPP itself, I think that it provides that environment. So we have responded to their letter. We've asked the National Peace Council, since they have given indication that they are ready, and the MPP to say now they are okay with the participation of other parties. Once the National Peace Council is ready and they fix a date and fix a venue, we will all be there. If it is just these 2 parties that will start, we will start with them, and then there will be an agreement as to who and who should be involved. We do not want the president to stay out of this, because the genesis of all these vigilante stroke militia we are talking about, he was a key participant. Indeed, up till date, some of these militia groups are still doing and working possibly up to him. Your platform have interviewed, I've forgotten the gentleman's name. I think he is a leader of one of the groups, these militia groups in Kumasi.
Yeah.
You interviewed him.
Visible forces.
Yeah, invisible forces.
Or
And he indicated clearly that the president is their father, their leader, and they are working for the good of the leader. And if the leader says, they are willing to do what he says. Then you have the other militia group that your platform's investigations have brought out, the Eye. They also, in their activity, are giving indication that they are working for the identification and of His Excellency the President. And that at one such function that they went, because of the way they appeared, and smartly so, the President was asking, who are these? And asking them to give themselves another Ahuya. So it tells you clearly that the President has a role to play. And if you look at,
the person speaking in the video is telling the truth.
So far, we have not been told that he's not telling the truth. So far, I haven't heard from the president, neither have I heard from the ADC. You have heard from people who are very far away. The other day, I came for a program with one gentleman, the regional secretary of the NPP, who claimed that function he was there and that the president came late and that it could not have been possible for the president to talk to anybody. I said, you are not the president's ADC. So you cannot be with the president all through from the time he arrived to sitting and going out. The only person who can possibly recollect whether the president spoke to somebody on that day or not is his ADC, who will happen to be by him almost all the time that he is there. So this attempt to say this or say that, at least what we have in evidence is the person's own voice, is video. It's not audio to say that someone sat somewhere and generated it. It's video we are all seeing. So far, I would want to accept what the person is saying. The person has not come out to say, oh, I lied. Like in the case of their Deputy General Secretary, who said Jubilee House dole out some cash for their program in Cape Coast and only a few of the executives sat on the cash. When the audio came out and they were playing, he said, oh, now he was just, he was just bragging to get information, which information he has not shared with his other colleagues. At least, okay, he has said so even though I don't believe his bragging defense. I don't believe it though. But this one has not said he was bragging. So I want to believe that His Excellency the President knew about them. That is why we cannot take him off. And we also know that when it comes to legislation, if that is what the President wants to do, of course, he can go through an EI, can go through an executive instrument to get these things disbanded. But once he himself admitted that there's a need for discussion, that discussions must be done in such a way that you completely deal with the menace. Because it is not only political militia that we, if you want to call it militia, or political vigilantism that we have. We may have it in our religious activities. The other day, it was one supposed man of God who will be visiting one facility or the other with his militia. So okay. Sometimes you may see even a chief having his militia. You will see, especially where lands are involved. So the whole issue of this vigilante or militia that we are discussing should not be limited to just the political.
So allow me to ask, since the NPP have agreed to, meet and consider how broad the scope of your dialogue should be, why not raise these issues with them, the NPP, when you meet with them?
Oh, sure.
Why write back to the president? Because you do recognize that it would create the impression among those who are waiting to criticize either you or this process. It gives them that impression that you're trying to, now that they've agreed, you want to bring other conditions or you want to bring up other hoops for them to jump through. Why not just go give a venue and let the meeting happen?
we have not changed or given any new condition. You see, His Excellency the President was the one who spoke first. And in a way of giving respect and honor to his office, we wrote to him thinking that this is the best way we think this issue could be handled. Then he had all the authority to have invited the author of the letter to him and not write. But he chose to write. And it goes on record that he has written this and this was his understanding. And even in that letter, attempting to blame the NDC and creating a situation of lack of appreciation of what it is that we are talking about. And so, since you cannot call the president that, Mr. President, come for me to explain to you, and since it wasn't the MPP as a party that wrote that letter with their own misunderstanding of our position, it is important to write back to the author of the letter for him to have an appreciation of our position. We do hope that this final letter, or this letter that we have written to him, should be the final communication between him and the NDC. As far as the best way, we have just told you. Luckily for us, at the time he was doing so, his party have actually departed in a way from his position and accepting our position. So we clearly, that was also indicated in the letter to him, that his own party have written and accepting our position. So we just want to draw his attention to that. If they have not drawn his attention already, we want to draw his attention that this is the position of the party. And we think that that is the way to go. Because if you observed, tabloids that are affiliated to his party were trying to create a certain image for NDC, that as if it is the NDC that didn't want the whether it is disbandment or resolution of all these vigilante thing. And clearly speaking, if we don't have a detailed, proper national dialogue on this, just a mere legislation would not resolve the problem.
Which brings me neatly to the next thing I wanted us to talk about. And my question is, what is the solution? I'm keen to get your thinking from your perspective. You've been the party's national organizer before. You know about these boys. You've seen them at work. They all work in the name of the party. I'm assuming you've even benefited from the work that they do. They've provided security at events that you have attended. I'm not wrong, am I?
You see, that is the reason why I have had problem with the use of vigilantism until Professor Mensah Bonsu introduced the militia, which I think I also buy in, because vigilantism itself has a lot of positive things there. So we were struggling to add another word to vigilantism to explain the negative one, that violent vigilantism. And so people were trying to get another word that will qualify to differentiate between vigilantism we all know is which is positive from the negative one that has happened in recent time. The NDC as a political party truly have task forces that perform security roles, because we actually have a security committee, a committee that is made up of officers who have served this country in various capacities, either in policing or in military or in other intelligence gathering, and have retired, are available, serving and equipping and making sure that, because we are in the field of research and intelligence gathering. A political party is a possible government in waiting. And therefore, you must have all the intelligence that is necessary to be able to take decisions that will positively affect this country. So we have such a solid structure. And we have installations, we have offices, we have equipment, we have vehicles, all of which needs some level of protection and attention.
Beyond what the state provides to all of us?
Of course.
And
beyond
our organizations?
Why? The state, don't you have a security at your home?
I can't afford it.
Don't you have a watchman at your home? The state is providing security, but we all individually have security in our homes.
But they have to be legally authorized by the Ministry of the Interior. If you're going to set up a private security,
right? The watchmen that we have to do they license watchmen and then the rest?
Well, if you set up a group, a team of
no, but they are not necessarily people that have been set up for money. They are not necessarily people that have been set up for money. But as a political party, you do events and providing services such as if people have to go and park their vehicles and they have to be watched. You are hiring equipment maybe 3 days ahead that needs to be watched so that nobody breaks in to steal anything. You need people to provide some protection for such things. It will cost you so much if you have to go and rely on the state security or other security services that will charge you. So if you have your own party people who will do this service as their contribution to the party, and all you have to do is possibly provide a ration for them that is cheaper for you. That is positive. That is not militia in the strictest sense, and that is what we have always used and known to. You are going for an election, you need people to help you carry material, and then the rest, you need people who would sit with, maybe the driver is going to deliver some material alone, you need some persons to join them. So you have this kind of services, which is positive. The worrying trend, and especially what caused us everything, was the state-sponsored terrorism that happened, especially in Ayawaso, West Wagon, where we saw the movement of persons who otherwise were known to be providing these services to a particular political party being collected and dumped in the national security, giving uniforms, using state vehicles that have police insignia on them, when the police itself say they are unaware of those vehicles. The police whose insignia was placed on those vehicles, the IGP, who is the head of the police, says he has not got such equipment. It should send a certain warning signal to all of us. Because who knows, it could have been even you, the media persons, that could have been attacked on that day. Because those people don't even know who they were even looking for. So it is not just an NDC thing.
Okay, I get the point you're making, that the situation at Ayawaso, where these individuals who we now know came from a party background, that's a new dimension. But we do have the existing problem too. You've described the provision of security as their contribution to the party, but is that how you would characterize a group like the Azoka Boys?
You see, the Azoka, actually, the term Azoka Boys, I'll give you how it came about. Azoka didn't start with NDC from it. Something happened. The murder of the overlord and some other things happened, and he decided to decamp from his original party to join the NDC. And in doing the decamping, he decamped with his group. So that was where the term Azoka and his boys, Azoka Boys, joined NDC. So, and his joining was huge. It was a huge thing in Tamale. And so it established and remains where he was able to hold his group And he integrated them into the NDC and they remain loyal to him. Because loyalty was the operational thing with which they were serving the party before they moved to join NDC. So it wasn't a group that the party went out to actually establish and name it Azoka Boys. It was their movement into the NDC and the loyalty with which they have served their leader. It's not an armed group that goes for military training or military exercises and do ahoya and then the rest and march and so on and so forth. That was not what
But they have been engaged in violence. They have been seen to, in some instances, to be armed. And there have been a lot of trouble that have been caused because of their presence at various
events. That's why I'm telling you that anytime you have a group that have come together in a certain spirit, when they move into an action area, you clearly will see them.
So let me ask you this.
Violence have happened in many other platforms without us originally knowing that this group has been organized. You have even installation of a chief, and before you see people will collect together, and then you see sightings happening. We must differentiate that from where the party, an institution, sets out to establish a group. That's what I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to differentiate.
Very quickly,
because they have affiliated with us over the period, and people think that some of their activities have resulted in the feeling and the belief that they work as a militia. Yes, we have a responsibility to see how we can look at it and deal with it, but we must let everybody know that the group called Azoka Group was not a group that any political party went out of its way to actually establish. It is their entry into the NDC that brought about that naming.
Understood. And this is a very quick one because I would like us to bring in over Skype Mr. Adam Bona for some for a bit of his thinking from the security perspective. But I've always wanted to ask you this. And I'm so sorry, we keep using Azoka Boys because it's just an example. It's not the only group of this nature in this country. So, but
it is because that is the only thing that readily comes to mind when NDC, as far as NDC is concerned. If it were to be MPP, you can name Bamba Boys, you can name Invisible Forces, you can name Delta Forces, you can name Kandahar, you name Bulgar Bulldogs, you can name Volta Crocodiles. So they have so many vigilante groups.
You also have the Hawks, the Lions.
There are
examples on both sides.
We don't have such things.
The question I wanted to ask is this. Are the Azoka Boys an asset or a liability to the NDC?
Before I even answer that one, you asked an earlier question, so how do we resolve it? The resolution to the problem is what the NDC have suggested, that there should be a proper dialogue. Luckily, the country seems to be very much interested now. What they used to see maybe as something normal, with what happened at Ayawaso West Wago, where the government raised the thing from a normal scuffle between the contesting parties during elections and so on and so forth to a state-sponsored level, the country has become interested. Right. So a dialogue, a true proper dialogue, as we are proposing, which now the MPP is accepting, is the way to go. Right. Are they an asset? Yes, of course they are party members. And so in that consideration, they are an asset. If they do something and go overboard, you will have to manage what it is that they have done which has gone overboard. But so far, in our workings with them, I haven't heard that they have engaged in acts like going to chase judges out from court, going to chase persons that have been appointed and beating them to pulp and then the rest and injuring them. I haven't heard them involved in such.
They have been engaged in violence. They have beaten people up. They have used weapons.
I have heard accusations that they have done so, but we have really never had any evidence to that effect, because who have been arrested for such an offense, who has reported that specifically it was this person, but we've heard names. When something happens, they say, oh, Azoka Boys. When something happens anywhere, they say, oh, Azoka Boys, because that is the name that they readily will get. So even when that group is not there. The mere presence of maybe their leader, then they say, oh, Azoka boys were there, they were the ones who did it. But nobody has actually been arrested or been prosecuted or someone has named somebody.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying allegedly. But if they do something that goes out of the way of the normal things that they are supposed to do, the party must step in and show leadership.
We'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But we're joined by Adam Bona. He's a security expert. You've heard him on this platform a number of times, and he has certainly been interested in the bid to disband party militia now. Mr. Bona, good morning to you.
Good morning, and good morning to my brother.
Now, Mr. Bona, the latest from the NDC is another letter to the president. This time around, they're saying, look, forget about dialogue and making it inclusive. Actually, this is a much bigger problem. We need a national conversation about it. We need to bring in the issue of land guards. We need to bring in the issue of police violence and individuals who are incorporated into the state institutions, even though they have party militia backgrounds. We need to look at all kinds of organized, unlawful violence that threaten the nation. And this is a call on the president, not just on the NPP. I wonder how this strikes you from a security perspective.
Yes, thank you very much. For me, I think without this, that the NDC do have been writing to the president so that this would have been limited among themselves. Parties, where they would have to open it up. I have proposed where the president seems to be respectfully calling the shots with regards to how the political parties, should kind of say, even though he's either the most important person within the MP. I would want that we have political party or political parties, the president, should go with you all that matters. The political parties should deal with issues that concern political parties, opening it and saying land guardism directly connect what we have in the party and then the crimes we are seeing from some parts of the political parties. Opening it up and bringing in other political parties. I have already expressed opinion about that. And in 1992, specifically said we should have put party democracy, not two-party democracy. So on that, I believe that it's the right way to go. Now getting a minister, well, it is good. I propose an ECOWAS minister, but on themselves, they think that the Peace Council, which I think they are absolutely resources to be able to do that. They should go ahead and do it, but it should be open for a national dialogue. As far as I'm concerned, there are people, I call them, entrepreneurs in that area where they form this group to be able to benefit with regard to sending books and cards out there and commit crimes. They themselves find themselves in one position or the other. But I heard you speak to ask my brother Kofi Adams, regards to proper. In recent years, the fearful group who are affiliated, the NDC has denounced them, is a hoax. It's a bit of background. Indicates that the hoax is the most feared, if you ask me, group in terms of stands for militia affiliated to what do you call it, the NDC. And when it comes to the NDC, there are several of them. I have the Delta Forces, the Invisible Forces. These are, in recent years, the NDC is leading one of the most feared militia. But in the NDC, the research indicates the hoax. And so let's put the things in the right perspective. With the assault force, what it is that probably in recent years, they have not become probably, I would say, having come in with a lot of violence. And so let's make sure we are calling out these people and letting them that are aware of them. And so as far as I'm bringing it back to the issue I think that we open that all other stakeholders also have technical knowledge in how to guns operate. It's a gun metallic, the most metallic. Where you have like a mafia who leads a group, we especially notice they go in and when they come in, I mean, they share a stuff. And so let's identify them properly. Bring all of this to a table, try to dialogue. And as far as I'm concerned, a law, it doesn't matter which law is passed. I don't think a law will away with party militia and with activism. No.
Right. Now, this call by the NDC to actually broaden the scope, that's actually what I'm curious about. I mean, I can understand the point you're making that, yes, indeed, the call for broader consultation is a positive one from your perspective. But now, doesn't it appear that the NDC is simply, if you will, trying to redefine the task? So now it's no longer just about party militias, but it's about all violent groups. So now the NDC is calling for a dialogue on all violent groups. Should we not try and solve one problem at a time? Which is a better approach from a professional security perspective?
I tell you, a proper approach is take them one after the other. We currently have faced 2020 elections. 2020 elections, it's staring at us. We have a bigger issue, and where I also was about, we saw the case. We've seen one person in front of NDC party office. We've seen people picking up in Kumasi High Court. We've seen coordinators driven out of official office. And so this is the issue that we need to put. And so as far as I'm concerned, let's deal with the issue concerns political party hooliganism, political party militia, political party target, and what do you call it, militia. Once we are able to do that, I believe that once the dialogue is over, if you look at other sectors, we can bring them in. Because then if we are careful, and we need to bring in the, what you call it, land partisan, and you will lose focus. And the moment you lose, the issue that we're talking about, I think the NDC and the political party should let us have this issue as something that will propel us in 2020 election, where we are not going to speak happens, where they demonstrated at their last presidential conference, where he said no security force. We saw how peaceful the election was. It means that the NDC House, for example, what they need their own internal party security to manage any of their elections, and the police were there. So if for nothing at all, you said the example. And so as far as I'm concerned, let's limit it to the issue and instead of bringing all that. If we do that, it's going to take 10 years. This issue will not be resolved. So let's deal with them after hoping the short commission, if they deliver their report to the president, when the one comes out, the president probably, if you ask me, might finding or might end up scrap national security. This is what I'm looking at, because national security is becoming a holding ground for some of these groups. They form this organization because it's another way to get national security. But I believe that the president is own wisdom. When as it's received, he's going to line the national security architecture, because at the moment, the national security architecture doesn't, I don't know what the focus, it doesn't exist. If you ask me, I have asked if there is any attempt, there is someone who wants to pick someone hostage, do I report to the police or do I report to counter-terror dogs? We don't have. So for now, let's ask the political party, deal with this issue. We are ready to support you. We are ready to help you all this. And the Peace Council chairman has spoken, about that once come to us, we trust you. Myself and my colleagues have also spoken. And I think we are all speaking the same tune. I should open up, but don't lose the others have probably don't have any immediate connection to a political party organism.
All right. Mr. Bonner, thank you very much for that intervention. I believe we have some breaking news. This is rather unfortunate, but about 60 people are feared dead following a head-on collision of two buses on the Kintampo-Techiman Road. About 60 people feared dead at the scene of this head-on collision of two buses on the Kintampo-Techiman Road. We will bring you further details of this, but news reaching the Joy News channel right now is that about 60 people is the number that we fear have lost their lives in this head-on collision. Two buses traveling in opposite directions on the Kintampo-Techiman Road feared to have collided. Details to come. Now let's return to our conversation, and Mr. Bonner's intervention there is quite interesting because to his mind it should be a one problem at a time approach.
Sure, it will be one problem at a time, but you will have a holistic picture, knowing that the problem is not only at this sector. So it's like a patient who reports sick. The person has had some accident, the person is bleeding, you have other issues. So you need to know, okay, which one do I tackle first? But you know the general issues around the patient. That the patient is not just bleeding, but there are other issues. So you tackle the bleeding in order to stop the blood from oozing out more. Then you move on to deal with other issues. But we shouldn't just have at the back of our mind, like the president wants to do, I want to legislate on it, as if it is just parties that are involved in it. So when you legislate, then that ends it. A dialogue will let you have an appreciation of all the facets of this problem. Then if you want to look at the political one first, because usually they contest elections and win elections and may have opportunity of putting some of these persons into the security system, as have happened now. And that is why we cannot do these discussions without the involvement of the president. And that is why it is not just simple, as people will want to suggest that in the case of the NDC primaries, we said no aspirant should provide his or her own security. In this case, they were all male, so his own security at the polling points, and that the police will be responsible for that. And we told the police that they must bring police that is known to the party in the district or constituency involved, not any SWAT police that we do not know. That is why, if it comes to the national elections, where a political party have recruited their vigilante or militia persons with 2-week training into the security system, where there are reported cases that we read from newspapers and then other tabloids that the security system is being forced to recruit party apparatchiks. And you remember sometime in the past where an MP and minister said he alone brought 300 people into police from his constituency. When you have such a situation, and we don't check and make sure we clean the system, if you are going to be posting double to provide security, and then you tell me that I should not look for my own security, what type of security is double going to provide on the day of election? Double will be providing security for MPP and not national security, as happened in Ayawaso West Wago. That is why the discussion must go beyond just these two parties, and to make sure that we go into the architecture of the security system, find out recruitments that have happened over a certain period, background of persons, and deal with that situation. Until that is done, you will still be approaching this national security setup with a certain eye and with a certain mindset. We all will be happy that if you are driving and you are stopped by persons dressed in police uniform, you are confident that you are being stopped by police. But unfortunately, that cannot be said to be the case in some situations, because we've had instances where people have been stopped by a person wearing uniform, and it happens that they are operating with a robbery gang. And the regular security have appeared and arrested them and found them either wearing police uniform or wearing military uniform or having accoutrements that should be handled only by these security services. So we all want that assurance. Nobody should think, or nobody should ever have in his mind that, oh, politicians, they feel like they are okay. No. We also use the roads. It is not every time that we move with some of these persons they would describe as even militia or vigilante. We also move sometimes alone. We use roads in the night. We sleep at homes. We have children who go to school alone. We have other family members who do movements alone. And so therefore, we want to have an atmosphere that is peaceful for all. And that is why Ghanaians must buy into the NDC's proposal.
But Mr. Adams, you know, from the beginning, we try to, diagnose the problem, figure out what the right solution should be. And, we're so pleased for your insights. So one of the things that we haven't touched on particularly is the police. And the fact that the parties don't trust them. Look, even the parties in government don't trust them. And there is a certain overt effort by parties in government to abuse the police power to manipulate the police's work. And that is what has created this difference between political crime and normal crime. I mean, I remember how shocked I was, to read the report that the former chairman of your party, Mr. Kofi Portafi, was stopped at a checkpoint on his way to Talensi with an AK-47 in his vehicle. But nothing came of that. Ms. Adams, if an AK-47 is found in my vehicle, you know what will happen to me. So is this part of the problem? Is this not perhaps the crux of the problem?
First and foremost, I have heard that story. But you must have an appreciation that certain category of officers of state also have security that is provided them. Our former chairman was also the Director General of NADMO. Now is no longer organized, now is an authority. By that status, he is provided security. I do understand that when it came to the by-election, all persons who were entering are supposed to have their security persons report to the security responsible for the by-election, for them to know that, okay, you are entering into this area with this type of ammunitions and so on and so forth, so they can record. I don't know whether that was what didn't happen at the time he was entering with his security. So if more explanation was not given, maybe you blame the persons who should have provided some much more details that was not provided.
That was his car. Of course, that was his vehicle.
I'm saying, yeah, his vehicle, but he has to be in his vehicle.
Yes.
His security and others will have to be in his vehicle.
But
because he was, you know that he
no
combined...
one in the vehicle claimed ownership of the AK-47. There was no security officer licensed to carry an AK-47.
I'm telling you
in
that
the vehicle.
For his position, he will have such security provided him. Sometimes the security person may not be in the vehicle, but before you weapon, but the weapon may be there.
That sounds regular to you?
That's possible. Oh, it happens. It happens. Like the media, maybe you use my car for your activity. You have your recorders. You may leave your recorder in my car, but you yourself, you may not be in there. That's possible.
You know there are rules governing the use of weapons.
And I'm saying that some of these rules get violated. And when it happens, it helps us to do training. When they happen, what must happen is that subsequently such a thing should not happen. That is why after Talensi, didn't you go to Amenfi West? Mm-hmm. Did you hear any such thing happen at Amenfi West?
Mr. Adams, the point I was trying to make
is that
nobody arrested Mr. Portafi.
I know your point that
because I would have been arrested. I would have had to go and give this explanation
because
in court.
First and foremost, you don't even have a right to to such a facility.
That is true.
And
Neither
you are
does
not
Mr.
supposed to. You are not supposed to have an AK-47 in the first place.
Mr. Potterfield doesn't have a license for an AK-47
You can only
either.
have maybe a pump action or a sidearm.
That's right.
When it is, you are not supposed to have an AK-47
And that applies to Mr. Potterfield
And I'm
as
saying
well.
that I am very sure that what I have told you per his position and the one who, when the checks were done, they realized what it is and where it is coming from. That's why the matter didn't travel how far you thought it should travel.
But in my case, I would have had to go and explain in court.
Because in the first place, you are not even entitled to it.
All right.
That is how it is.
Okay.
But dealing with all these matters and then the Adam Bonner's concerns also, I'm happy he agrees that dialogue is the way to go. Almost everybody who have spoken and truly want these issues resolved believe that dialogue should be the way to go, and involving a lot more persons is the way to go. We strongly would believe that something serious has to be done with our police. The police themselves, some at senior level, are worried. Dr. Gojo's tape that went viral, and COP, Kofi Adams, and then the rest issues that they have all raised are concerns for them. We believe that their recruitment processes must be checked, so that what happened, seriously, Ayawaso West Wagon was a killer. It was wrong, it was not right, it was bad to have had the state sponsor and do what it is that they did. And if you listen to the police and you listen to the national security persons, then you see the high-level mistrust even amongst them, where the police say they are unaware. You go into the police, some district commanders say we were not involved by our superiors and the rest. Some say they are aware, some say they are not aware. That level of selectivity will destroy that institution. We must all work. Police is all that we have, and we must work to raise the morale and then the acceptability.
Mr. Adams, this has been fascinating. I'm glad you made the time to speak to us today on this and all other related issues. Mr. Kofi Adams is a former national organizer of the NDC.